Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we've got a This Year in Perfume, and now we're all the way up to 1996, the year that Acqua di Gio originally came out, and just the tidal wave of aquatic, ozonic, clean fragrances completely took over the market. I do not own a bottle of Acqua di Gio, pour homme, and so you're not going to see the most famous, or I would say maybe not the most famous, but one of the best-selling fragrances ever in the history of fragrances, especially on the men's side. But honestly, it's one of the best-selling fragrances ever. I think it's up there with most bottles ever sold. That came out in 1996. I don't own a bottle because I don't really care for that DNA. But as we always do on these videos, before we hop into the list, this is actually going to be a top 12 list. So we have 12 in my collection that I want to discuss, ranked, and I'm actually going to rank them. So as I always say, these are just my opinions. Don't get offended if I say number 1 is better than number 12. You know, number 2 is better than number 10. This is just my opinion, and opinions do change over time. But if I were to rank them right now, this is how I would put them. And I'm going to show you my scent of the day. I'm actually going to the Raiders-Cowboys preseason game today in Dallas, so that'll be fun. Well, Arlington is where the stadium is now, but so that'll be a fun time. So I figured I'd knock this video out before I ended up going to the game. And so my scent of the day for the Raider game, I wanted something, I would say, bold and that sort of cuts through the beer and cheese pretzels and all the other crap that you smell at a game. And so today I wore Anna Zworykina's Cuir de Russie. And I wore this for a couple reasons. Number one, it really is a beast, and it's a very unique smell. And I'm going to review this. So I'm trying to wear some fragrances that I'm going to do full reviews on very soon. And so this is one of them that I really want to try to get to know. And you can see I have a lot of juice, and I actually have a little smaller vial as well. I'm going to bring this with me, like almost a little bit of a travel size vial. So this will come with me. And so both of these were actually sent to me by friends. So that's something I have to mention. The kindness of the community sort of allows me to get my nose on stuff I never would have been able to. And this is not cheap. This is actually a very expensive fragrance. I think these are the only 2 sizes they come in, other than a very small sample, if you will. And I'm not 100% sure. I think this is 7.5 mil and this is 15 mil or something, and they are expensive. Price per mil on these are very, very expensive. Actually, my brother Rich Mitch across the pond, he did a video series on the house of Anna Zworykina, so you can go check that out. But I'm going to do a full review on Cuir de Russie one of these days, so I wanted to sort of wear it and get to know it and stuff like that. And it is good. I do like this kind of perfumery. I've been wearing a lot of Ariege Ladores and Bortnikoffs and stuff like that lately, so this falls right into where my taste has been leaning towards. I've just been craving that type of perfumery for whatever reason. So Cuir de Russie is my scent of the day. It's actually it's an interesting take on a Cuir de Russie because it has so many different facets. There's the castoreum note is obviously my most favorite part of the fragrance because I love that leatheriness to it. But it also has things like real ambergris in here, ambrette, which is also known as musk mallow. It's a very expensive musk alternative. And this is a very tarry fragrance. But you know what? Wearing it in the heat, I get a lot more. The fragrance really changes depending on whether you wear it in. Sometimes it's extra spicy. Sometimes it's extra resinous with that labdanum and that tar. It really does feel like boiling tar. And today when I sprayed it on, I noticed there were so many little green touches in the top. So I got a lot of this. It felt like a freshly picked, sprightly, like, you know, mint straight out of the ground. Like a little piece of mint you were going to put into your tea or something like that. And then I started to get some of the green galbanum and absinthe and mugwort. So there's multiple green notes at the top that sometimes I get them, and honestly, sometimes I feel like it just goes straight to the resinous, sort of heavier, smokier, you know, leathery type notes. So the fragrance is a little bit of a shapeshifter, and that's why this is going to be a tough one to review, because I don't think you can really do it justice by just spraying it on and you know, doing like a early impression video. You really need to wear this fragrance. And the other thing is, I noticed in the heat, sometimes the more powdery aspects of the florals come forward. So the ylang ylang and May Rose and Orange Blossom and stuff like that. Jasmine, there's a beautiful jasmine note in here. And there's an interesting note of yuzu in the top. And I really like notes like yuzu and citron and stuff like that being used because it sort of mixes things up from the normal lemon and, you know, lime and bergamot. And I think there is some lemon and bergamot in here as well. But I like mixing in the yuzu, which you don't get very much of, but it just adds a little bit when you're getting that fresh mint in the opening. Really nice fragrance. This was actually sent to me by Nissan, I believe. I believe it was Nissan. And the bigger bottle was sent to me by my good friend Al. Castoreum Al Manzano sent me this. And so the issue obviously is, would I buy these at that price? No, I don't think I would, because honestly, if I crave a Russian leather, I really feel like I have better options than that. Like I would just wear Chanel's Cuir de Russie and be happy as a pig in slop, but I am enjoying getting to wear and know Anna Zworykina's work, but I've never smelled anything else from the house. That's the only one. So if you want more of a broad breakdown, check out my brother Rich Mitch's, you know, videos on the entire house. So that's my scent of the day. Okay, so let's get into this. So before we hop into my 12 fragrances in my collection from 1996, let's go back in time. Let's go into the time machine and talk a little bit about what was happening in 1996. Let's get in the right frame of mind to discuss perfumes from 1996. So here's some sort of, I would say, important events, historical events that happened in 1996. So there was obviously a presidential election. That was the year that Bill Clinton defeated Bob Dole and won his second term in office. Slick Willie. Oh, Slick Willie. And so the election had the lowest turnout since 1924. And I wouldn't be shocked if we actually have a lower turnout in this coming election in 2024, because I really feel like people are just sort of, I don't know if they're sort of losing their faith in democracy or what, but I'd be very interested to see how many people vote in this next year's election. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. There was a song that came out you guys might have heard of called The Macarena. And I just think of Dr. Evil on Austin Powers. And so that came out, and obviously that was a hit. And cultural phenomenon, if you will. And then there was a fuel tank that exploded on TWA Flight 800. That was a huge news story. The plane crash killed everyone on board. And the reason that is seared into my memory is I was actually traveling the weekend that it happened. It was like, I don't remember exactly, but it was like within the week of it happening. I remember getting on a plane, going to New York to visit relatives and stuff like that. And so I remember just as a kid, you're thinking like, wow, that really happened. People really died. It's terrible, right? 8 people died in a blizzard in, what was it, Mount Everest, I believe. Yes, it was a Mount Everest blizzard. There was the very first presidential election held in Taiwan, which is an interesting little tidbit there. And what else happened? Let's see. Prince Charles and Diana divorced. That was a big one. So the Princess of Wales got divorced. And there was a Mars Global Surveyor that the United States ended up launching. And it entered orbit the very next year in 1997. Mad cow disease was in the news during the time. Alan Greenspan was, I mean, he was the Federal Reserve guy forever. What else? That's really the main highlights, I think. When I think of 1996, it's the Macarena, and it's the TWA Flight 800 explosion. So, let's get into these 12, now that we're in the state of mind of going back in time to 1996. So, first of all, number 12. And number 12 is a tough one for me to put here because... it's a classic. It came out in the 1930s originally. Actually, that's not true. It originally came out in 1927 under the name Canoe Royale. Extra Rich Cologne is what it originally came out at. Somehow it got reformulated in 1935, and that's the one I think that really stuck. The Eau de Cologne version sort of took off. It was a Jean Carl's creation, all-star perfumer. And so this is Dana's Canoe. And actually, Keelan from Sense of South Jersey very kindly sent me this decant when I purchased a bottle off of him. I purchased this from him, which I will review. This is going to go into the All-Star or Hall of Fame vintage reviews. This is Carrington This is a fantastic fragrance. So I got this from Keelan, and he threw this in for free because I said, hey, I've never smelled Canoe. He said, man, I'll give you a huge decant. I got a liter of the stuff. And he did. And you know what? The reason that this is coming up in the 1996 video is that it was reformulated in 1996. That's actually the current version, if my understanding of the breakdown, 1927, 1935, and then finally, I don't know who the perfumer was that did the 1996 reformulation, but Dana's Canoe is a little bit like a weird Pinard Clubman type thing, but you know what really puts me off about this is how sweet, it's like a candied lavender, like this very sweet lavender, musky thing. And the sweet powderiness of the lavender, I really don't like. This is one vintage fragrance that I can tell you is not for me. But I'm going to review it. I'm going to force myself to wear it and review it. But Dana's Canoe is, it's if you like negative reviews, tune into that one. That's at number 12. Number 11. Now, this is another one that I really feel like I have to sort of put an asterisk next to because there are people who claim that this is like the greatest fragrance of all time, and maybe the vintage version was. I don't have the vintage bottle of this. I've never smelled the vintage version either, is the tough part, and it's sort of a floral, dry, leafy tobacco fragrance is the way that I would describe it. This is Versace's Dreamer. And Versace's Dreamer is still in production today. Euro Italia is the producer, which that is the bottle that I have right here. But apparently there are some big differences between the vintage and the modern. And so for me, even though this has notes you would think I would absolutely love, tarragon, artemisia, juniper, iris, there's a flax note and a lily note, and then there's amber in the base with tobacco flower, okay? And the tobacco flower gives you a good, idea of sort of what you're smelling. But the issue for me with this fragrance is the opening. There's like this is a very 90s fragrance. So you have to remember, this was competing against things where Versace knew everything was going fresher. And so he wanted a tobacco fragrance, but it's not your normal honeyed, smoky type of tobacco. This tobacco is a very modernized, like 90s take on tobacco, very floral take on tobacco, if you will, hence the tobacco flower. And what they did in the top, though, is they added this very fresh 90s style, like laundry musk. And that's the part that I really struggle with. The first hour of this is really meh. And I really don't like that clean 90s laundry musk thing that that they did in the beginning, but this is the modern. So maybe the vintage really is that much better. I would love to smell a vintage bottle of this to do a comparison. I like it. It's just, there's so many things that I think are better. I wouldn't put this, anywhere near the best fragrances of 1996, hence why it is at number 11. So that is Versace's Dreamer. Although I do love the bottle. I love the name. I love the bottle. I love the packaging. The built-in sprayer. I absolutely love the whole little concept. But, I really feel like I need to get my nose on a vintage to give that fragrance a fair shake, because I don't think the modern is really worth it. So that is number 11. Number 10 is a decant. Actually, number 10 and number 9 are decants. And number 10 is actually staying with the House of Versace. So Versace has number 11 and number 10. And this is a fragrance that I'm able to do a video on one day for you guys, thanks to the great Anuj at Enchanté Perfumes. If you follow my channel in any form or fashion, you know Anuj. He is probably one of the most trustworthy, kind, generous souls in Fragcom. Absolutely love Anuj and his little shop. I think he has the best little perfume shop on earth, Enchanté Perfumes. I will leave the link in the description if I remember, but if you've been to my channel or live streams, you've seen the link a million times. And this is called Versace's Green Jeans. So this is a very interesting scent. And the reason it's one step above the Dreamer for me is because this is a amazing take on lime. Lime and lemon and bergamot and aldehydes, and there's some old school tarragon. So to me, this is a citrus fragrance done right. And this was a designer in 1996. For me, it's hard to do a proper, well done citrusy fragrance. And if you've seen the bottle of Green Jeans, it's almost like a see-through green like bottle. If you've seen the Jeans line bottle, they all kind of look the same, but they have different, black and white and red and all that stuff. So the green one is sort of the citrusy green fresh fragrance. And for me, I will say this is one of the best lime fragrances I think I've ever smelled. The lime in this is piercingly brilliantly done. There's some old school notes too. Lavender, caraway, coriander, carnation, geranium, jasmine, rose, fir, another green note, oak moss, another green note with amber, cedar, and musk in the base. And so I think it's very hard to do a green citrusy fragrance well because it can be very boring. But they sort of meshed this modern, because everything was going fresher, right? So for them, they tried to go fresher by going the citrusy route, which I actually really appreciate much more than the aquatic route many a times, right? And so I think they did a really good job with this one, staying with the times, but also paying sort of a homage to the past, if you will, with the old school carnation note and fir and oak moss in the base and stuff like that. So a masculine release from Versace called Green Jeans, and I will do a review of this one of these days. Thank you, Anuj. So that is Versace Green Jeans. Discontinued, unfortunately, and hard to find. That's why I just have that little decant at number 10. Number 9 is also a decant, but this came from my good friend Nick, who is many of the early impression videos where you see these type of little decants that I do them off of. Those are from Nick. He's very, very generous in keeping fragrances I've never smelled coming into my wardrobe here, and this one is something special. I really like this. I'm going to have to spend some more time with it before I do the review, but I really, really like this. And in fact, this is one I could see as being a climber, where it climbs up the list the more I get to know it. This is from the house of Profumum Roma, and this is called Fumidus. Sorry, Fumidus is how I'm going to try to pronounce that. Fumidus, Fumidus. And Fumidus is a woody, smoky, earthy, very earthy, challenging. There's some challenging bits in the opening to this. And some people compare it to things like, for example, I see many comparisons to things like stuff like Encre Noir in this dark, brooding, if you've ever smelled Encre Noir, it basically means black ink. And if you've ever smelled Encre Noir, it has that sort of dark, brooding aspect to it. There's a little bit of that here. There's this like smoked birchwood note, and it has this smoldering type feel with vetiver. And that's the reason why you get the Encre Noir, is it's a very brooding, dark, mysterious, inky like smell with Encre Noir. With Fumidus, man, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Fumidus has this earthy, resinous, smoky bit, but also boozy. So there's no real boozy aspects in Encre Noir to speak of, but there's a boozy note in here, and I don't know what it is because it's not listed in the note listing at all. On Parfumo, it only shows smoked birchwood and vetiver. And so I think it's a whiskey note, is what some of the people in the comments said. I don't know if that's true or not, or if it's just sort of a generic smoky, whiskey, boozy note. But I really like it. I like that burning, brooding, dark, challenging fragrance. And that's the reason why I think this has a chance to really climb as I get to know it. And again, I don't have a bottle, so this is just thanks to the kindness of Nick that I get to do a review on it. But I have had a chance to smell it once. I've sprayed it once. And I really like that. So that's why it's at number 9 for now, but I could easily see that sort of climbing the ranks. Okay, number 8. Number 8 is a shocker for me. An absolute shocker. And don't fool yourself because it's only at number 9 with the Profumum Roma and number 8 with this one. These are fantastic fragrances. So number 8 is a fragrance that I did not, have on my radar. I wasn't even thinking about this fragrance. It was something that was so far removed. Like, you could have said, hey, I'll sell you this fragrance for $10, and I'd have been like, probably not. But it's worth hunting down a bottle, especially if you're a fan of this sort of style of perfume, which I would call this sort of fresher 90s take, but with a little bit of a nod to the past, because there's some old school lavender in this, and it is brilliant. Actually, one of the best new lavender, not that this is a new fragrances, but new lavender fragrances that I've never smelled that I got my nose on. This is one of the best for me, and this is called Replay. So I'm shocked how much I love Replay. Obviously, this is a tester. I don't have the little cool cap, which looks like it's got like coils wrapped around it, but I don't care. It's almost like a spicy, woody, fresh, slightly maybe aquatic vibe. So remember, this is 1996. Remember what it's competing against, right? But the lavender in this is outrageously good. It's fantastic. You get lavender and lavender absolute, and it's blended with things like cardamom, so the spiciness is there. It's ambery, there's vetiver, there's juniper, there's patchouli, there's musk, there's cedar. You see all these sort of old school traditional notes, and yet somehow they took that and they made it into a 90s style perfume where when you smell it, the lavender is sort of giving off this freshness, if you will. You know, there really is a fresh lavender, like standing in a lavender field almost, you know, running your hands across the lavender as you're walking. Think of the scene in Gladiator where he's sort of going in and out of consciousness, and he imagines sort of just touching the field with his hand. That's what the lavender in here feels like. It's fantastic. Absolutely brilliant fragrance, and I'm shocked nobody talks about this. It is discontinued, so maybe it's hard to find. I can tell you that Morris Perfume is the final distributor on this, maybe the only distributor. This is an Italian house, Replay, but this is one of those sort of shock backs to reality where you smell something like this and you think, this was a designer. This was like a throwaway designer fragrance from the 90s. And niche houses nowadays charging $300-400 aren't making fragrances as good as this. This is where my love for vintage fragrance, anytime it starts to wane, something like this comes along and just shocks me back to reality, you know. And that's how always when I'm ranking my favorites, vintage is always number one. And if I ever think, oh, maybe I'm going to put niche as my, you know, always something like this happens and I'm reminded of just how great those old vintage fragrances are. So Replay, out of the blue, completely out of the blue. Thank you, Anuj, for sending me this. Really stoked to get to know it and talk about it. Big fan already. I've only worn it to bed once, but I love it so far. So I'm putting that at number 8. Number 7. Number 7 is going to be the very first in a line that completely dominates 1996 for me. It is the line of 1996. Excuse me. And it's not what you're thinking. This is an unsung line, a completely, I would say, lost to history. And I love discovering stuff like this, and I have to give a little special nod, hat tip to my good friend Armando, who sort of brought these to my attention with a decant he sent me, and I was absolutely floored. And he's like, dude, there's a whole set of them out there that no one talks about. And I couldn't believe it. And I got lucky, because I got very lucky, because you can find maybe one-off bottles here and there at very good prices too, but I found the whole set, which is very rare. So the set is the Pierre Cardin Centaure set, and this is what the bottles look like. So it is absolutely, it's a mammoth of a line. It's a behemoth. Every single one is good. Every single one. There's not a bad one. In fact, there's still one that I've been unable to find. It's the amber one, and it actually has a orange. It has like an orange horse head on top. So most of these were created in 1996. One was created in 1998. I'll talk to you about that one at the end. But the amber one has eluded me. Other than that, I've now secured the whole line thanks to this very hard to find set. And so number 7, one step ahead of Replay, is this one right here, the clear horse head, and this is called Cuir Blanc. All right, Cuir Blanc. So the white leather, right? And so Cuir Blanc is basically a fruity floral leather. And that's why, if you know my taste, you know that's instantly why this is only at number 7. But I'm telling you, if you can find any of these, and I'll tell you my favorites, because actually one of these is number 1 on my 1996 list. But if you can find any of these, any of them, I would urge you to grab it, especially if you find them at a good price. So this is basically a fruity floral leather. There's notes like fig, which, you know, when I smell this and I wear it, it reminds me of something Roja Dove would do right now. Seriously, I could easily see this type of perfume being put in a $500 bottle with bedazzled caps and people going crazy over it, absolutely losing their mind. The best leather fragrance of all time, you know, blah, blah, blah. And actually, he loves using that fig note. Like, for example, and I'm going to review this very soon as well, but there's a review of this coming on my channel soon, hopefully. This is Fetiche pour Homme. So this is his take on, like, Bel Ami, right? And I love this. This is fantastic. But you know what? There's some of this in here. There's some fig, and he added the fig note in here. He added some different things to try to make it a little different, I think. If you've ever smelled Pure Distance M, the original release, which is now discontinued, they have Pure Distance M like version 2.0 now or something. That's completely different. But if you smelled the original, this is probably the closest to Pure Distance M with a little twist with that fig and stuff like that. And that's exactly what this has. It has fig, vetiver. There's a mint note in the top, which is brilliant. And there's tobacco. So it's a leather, tobacco, oak moss, and it comes across as sort of like a fruity leather. And very smooth, very high. Everything in this line is high quality. Nothing smells cheap. Like the cap may look cool, but it is just sort of a little plastic cap. But I love the cap that they did. And you know, the bottle is just sort of like I don't know, like a little stock square bottle. Nothing to go crazy about. But the juice inside, the juice is shockingly good. It will take you back. Like you'll be like, this is Pierre Cardin in 1996, and again, shock back to reality when you start sort of looking at how the fragrance game progressed as the years went on. Vintage is, for me, the gold standard, and it's reasons like this why. But if you can get your nose on this, it would be. I would urge you to if you love vintage fragrances. So that is Pierre Cardin's Cuir Blanc at number 7. Number 6 is a very interesting fragrance, and it's very hard for me to rank this at number 6 because I honestly think that this is an all-star fragrance. It's just not my favorite fragrance from these all-star perfumers because they have some absolute gems. They have some of the greatest fragrances ever created, in my opinion. 2 perfumers worked on this fragrance. It's Dominique Ropion and Jean-Louis Suizac, who is one of my favorite of all time. He created some of the all-time greats. You know, Bel Ami, Fahrenheit, Opium, Dior's Dune for Women, O.R. Black by Pascal Moribito. I mean, just hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. And he created this with Dominique Ropion. So from 1996, this is Kenzo's Jungle. Now, this fragrance is a spicy oriental fragrance. And what I love about this, and probably this should have been higher ranked, it's just that there are some other fragrances that I just enjoy wearing a little bit more. But just from a creativity standpoint here, this stuff is, you know, sort of one of a kind, in my opinion. It's a very spicy oriental, and they've used things like, so they use this brilliant note of mango in here. And you know what? When I think about, just for some reason, my brain just sort of puts notes together and times together, and, you know, what different perfumers have done. And if you've ever seen the way that Bertrand Duchaufour will take sort of a crazy note that you wouldn't think fits, right? Like the blackberry in Jubilation 25, or actually he used a green mango note in L'Artisan's Timbuktu, right? But those sort of, he's brilliant at doing that, right? But Dominique Ropion and Jean-Louis Suizac were doing it in 1996 with Kenzo Jungle. And this was also called, I think, Jungle L'Elephant originally because of the elephant cap. But I'll tell you what, this is a fragrance marketed towards women, but guys, don't let that stop you from trying this. It is in the cold especially, there are some floral touches. You're going to get some ylang-ylang, some yellow banana feeling ylang-ylang. You're going to get some gardenia, and you're going to get some heliotrope. And the heliotrope here adds to the oriental type feel. I mean, it really feels like a thick, chewy, heavy oriental with brilliant spices. Cardamom, clove, and patchouli adds to the heaviness of it. So patchouli and vanilla and a little bit of mandarin orange in the top. It's absolutely a brilliant creation. If this was released today, they would just release it as unisex. I mean, I have no problem wearing this. Absolutely no problem. And I will review it. It'll get its own review one of these days. But Kenzo Jungle L'Elephant is brilliant. I absolutely love it. So that's at number 6. Number 5. Number 5 is a very interesting perfume. And again, very hard for me to rank these because this fragrance is sort of a fresh, spicy, lots of oak moss. And it was created by one of my favorite perfumers, Gerard Anthony. This is Ombr Gray. So Ombr Gray has an interesting story too because there's a old school version of this from 1965 that was discontinued, and I'm not 100% sure of how, the background and all that stuff, but Gerard Anthony sort of came in 1996 and created this. And when you smell this, just like Kenzo's L'Elephant with Kenzo Jungle L'Elephant with the big oriental thick, while everyone else is going aquatic and light and airy, they just went bam, big oriental. Well, what Gerard Anthony did for Ombr Gray is he said, okay, for all you old school guys who are not going to be wearing Aqua di Gio, even if your life depended on it, I'm going to make a fragrance for you. And he did. He created a fragrance that feels like it belongs in the 70s and 80s. It's got lots of sandalwood and musk and oak moss, and it's very woody and ambery, but there's a brilliant sort of citrusy opening to this, and it's bergamot, and it's a beautiful bergamot note. There's some neroli in here as well, and the neroli adds a little bit of freshness. So almost without them knowing, he sort of steers it where the opening adds a little bit of freshness. But one thing you'll notice about this fragrance is it is completely and utterly dry. Rich Mitch likes to say, when you take a sip of dry white wine or something and it almost like dry, like you almost want to cough. It's so dry. This is dry, 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 zero sweetness. So if you like that green textured oak moss, citruses, sandalwood, old school sandalwood. By the way, I used that Mysore sandalwood soap that a couple people sent me today for the very first time, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you to the folks who sent me some of those Mysore sandalwood soaps. They're awesome. So, but yeah, there's some sandalwood in here, and it smells very high quality. I don't know if it's Mysore they were using back then, but it's a very green, citrusy, dry, completely unsweetened. This is for the guys who were probably a little older in the mid-90s, and they were like, looking at the aquatic fragrances like, I'll never wear that crap, and they wanted to wear something new. They didn't want to wear Coros and Oranteus, so they probably bought stuff like this. Ombr Gray, fantastic fragrance. Gerard Anthony is the man. He is the absolute man. At number 5, discontinued, of course, but if you can find a bottle, I would urge you to check it out. Number 4. Number 4 is one of the greatest designers of all time. It hurts me to put this at number 4 because honestly, I think it is like if you did greatest designer fragrances, like just like a top 10 greatest designers, I think this would have to be on there, especially if you split it up by masculine, feminine. This is the masculine side, 1996. This set off probably one of the greatest binge of flankers in the history of man. This is Jacques Huclier's baby, his masterpiece. This is Amen. And so it was actually originally when it came out, it was called Angel Men. I don't know if you can see that. And you see how it says Angel right there. And then they basically just dropped the Angel and went with Amen. Maybe they didn't think Angel would fit very well with modern men. But this is a sweet gourmand. I hate gourmand fragrances. I hate sweet fragrances, and yet I love this fragrance. I think this is an absolute masterpiece. There is a little bit of this tarriness. It has everything is the thing. It has lavender. It has caramel. It has honey. It has coffee. It has benzoin and styrax and vanilla and musk and sandalwood and amber and tonka and patchouli, lily of the valley, cedarwood, jasmine. There's a little bit of peppermint in the top. There's all sorts of stuff, but somehow they made it work. Somehow they absolutely made it work. And L'Oreal bought the house of Mugler. So the older bottles say Thierry Mugler. I don't know if you can see that. They actually use his first name, Thierry Mugler. They shortened it to Mugler. So if you can find the older bottles that say Thierry Mugler, you don't have to go back and find the original Angel Men bottles. I mean, if you can, great, but you don't have to. Just get one that says Thierry Mugler on it, and you're fine. I would stay away from the modern Mugler stuff from what I hear. I've never done a comparison or smelled it myself. But Amen is supposed to be a big, bold, in-your-face fragrance with that patchouli. Patchouli is the heart of the composition. If you've ever smelled Angel, the women's version, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And there's some ethyl maltol, and there's some sweetness in here, whatever you want to call it. But it just works. I love wearing Angel, and all of the flankers is crazy. Like B-Men, or a taste of fragrance, which is known in Fragcom as like pure chili, people call it. Pure malt, pure Havana. I love wearing all those, and I hate sweet fragrances. So he just created something that just is, and again, it's completely against, right, what the trend was. These last three have been completely against the trend, and that just goes to show sometimes following the trend isn't the best course of action because everyone else is following the trend. You want to sort of do your own thing. So for me, one of the greatest designers of all time, Thierry Mugler's Angel or Amen from 1996. So that is at number 4. Number 3, 1, 2, and 3 are all Pierre Cardin fragrances. They're all from this Centaure line. I love this line. I think it's a crime that more fragrance enthusiasts, more vintage fragrance enthusiasts don't talk about this line. But it's hard to find is why. It really is. Some of these are very hard to track down. Some of them you'll find no problem. You can find them for 10 or 20 bucks on eBay. People don't even know what they are. They just throw them up there for dollars. But some of them you're really, really going to have to work for, or people know what they have and they're asking hundreds. So number 3 is the green one. It is called Cuir Fougere. So this is a leathery fougere fragrance, if you will. And so if you know leathery fougères from the 80s, you know, Smalto pour Homme, or, you know, those kind of fragrances, it'll get you in the ballpark. But I'm still always blown away by just the level of complexity and, you know, all of these sort of, it's hard to describe a designer fragrance that smells like a designer and yet uses such high quality ingredients, because we don't get that in today's marketplace. Usually designers smell cheap and they smell like designers when you smell them, especially now with all the modern synthetics. But there's this sort of woody, I mean, it's a fougere, right? So there's a woody green, leathery fougere aspect to this. I think there's a little oak moss, patchouli, tonka, you know, and some sort of citruses in the top, and probably some lavender, but just a brilliant fougere. Everything from the packaging, I mean, they absolutely nailed this as a leather fougere lover. And just to give you an idea of how rare and hard to find these are, there are 2 people on Parfumo who say that they own this fragrance, and I'm the only male who says that they own it. The other one is a woman. But that's it. 1 woman and 1 man on Parfumo say they own this, and that's it. And so, you know, it's no one's talking about it. It's sort of one of those unsung heroes. But if you like these little weird ones like I do, I would definitely urge you to check out Cuir Fougere. All right, so that is number 3. Number 2. Number 2 is the blue one. Shockingly, it's the blue one. And don't let the blue fool yourself. This is not an aquatic, okay? It's called Cuir Casaque. Casaque, Cuir Casaque. And this is sort of a spicy, woody, leathery fragrance, okay? And the way that they made the leather note here is a little different from many of the other ones. So to get you into the ballpark, and I actually have a backup. So I found this on eBay. So this is from the collection that I got the whole set from, and I found this on eBay for like $15. Again, no, they didn't even know what it was. They were probably just like, I found this in my grandfather's bureau, you know, it looks cheap. You want it for 15 bucks? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And I love this stuff. This is a shocker. Shocker how good this is. It's bergamot frankincense. There's a green grass note and lavender in the top. The heart is clove, jasmine, labdanum, and nutmeg. The base is patchouli, sandalwood, styrax, vanilla, and Virginia cedar. The styrax is the important note in the base, okay? So if you've ever smelled, actually what it probably is the closest to that I could point you in that, just to get you in the ballpark, if you've ever smelled Prada's Cuir Styrax, which this is a very underrated line, by the way. I'm going to review this. One of these days, I'll review this Prada. This is like Prada's exclusive line or whatever they called it. But I think these are all discontinued now. But Cuir Styrax is a great fragrance, but it's in, you know, that styraxy, waxy type leather creation. That's how it feels in Cuir Casaque. And it is brilliant. I absolutely love it. And that frankincense note, man, oh, it's so good with the spicy clove and just the resinous labdanum and just that creation of that sort of waxy, leathery, woody base. Love, pure love. I love this stuff. So glad to have a backup bottle as it's one of my favorites. And finally, my one favorite, like I said, one of these is not created in 1996. But the final one that is created in 1996 is the red one. And the red one is called Cuir Étalon. Cuir Étalon. And Cuir Étalon is my favorite from the whole line. Easily my favorite from the whole line. Because Cuir Étalon smells like Cuir Moresque. It has like a Serge Lutens Cuir Moresque vibe. And Cuir Moresque is a fragrance that came out in 1996, I believe. Cuir... Yeah, 1996. So they both came out in 1996. I don't know which one was first. This is discontinued, obviously. Cuir Moresque is still going. Cuir Moresque is like #1 on my wish list of Serge Lutens fragrances I haven't found. That and Fumerie Turc, I would say. Those two, 1 and 2. Or 1A and 2A, or and 2B if you want. But probably Cuir Moresque because I love those type of leathery, spicy... Cuir Moresque, I think, has maybe a little bit more like civet and animalic notes and stuff like that. But that's sort of, and I think there's even some oud in Cuir Moresque, if I'm not mistaken. But that sort of leathery, resinous take with spices, oh, it's a pure love. And this is the one that made me, Cuir Étalon is the one that made me hunt this set down. Because when I smelled this, when Armando sent me the decant of Cuir Étalon, I was like, mind blown. There's no way. I have to go get it. I have to go hunt this down. And I did. And I got the only one I think left on earth. It was like, I've never seen this set ever pop up on eBay again. But yes, Cuir Moresque is fantastic. I hope to add it to the collection one day. But if I never do, I'll be very happy to have Cuir Étalon because it scratches the same itch, if that makes sense. That leathery, spicy. It almost has that oily Bel Ami leather feel to it at times. Oh, man. Brilliant. Brilliant fragrance. Cannot believe that's a Pierre Cardin. And so the one that came out in 1998 is this one. This is the one that came out a couple years later. So it did not make the video. You'll see it in the 1998 video. It's called Centaure Tête d'Or. Tête d'Or. And it's sort of like a green, spicy, resinous, leathery fragrance. I like it. I like all of them. The whole line is a shocker how good it is. And... So that's my 1996 video. And what's funny is you don't see the usual suspects on here, right? So like I said, a lot of fragrances from 1996 are not on the list. So you don't see Philosopos, you don't see Azzaro Chrome, you don't see Acqua di Gio. You don't see all of these, the one that I really would like to smell, there's a couple. There's a Thundra from Profumum Roma, which I don't think I have a decant of. There is a fragrance from the house of Guerlain called Champs-Élysées, which I have not smelled that one, but I would really like to one of these days. They have a pure Parfum version of that, which I'd love to smell. And finally, there's a fragrance called Mark Burley for Men from 1996 that is... sort of a citrusy, fresh, leathery, you know, carrot seed-like fragrance, irisy carrot seed, that was created by Pierre Bourdon and Frederic Malle. So Pierre Bourdon and Frederic Malle created Marc Burley for Men in 1996. That is high on my wish list one of these days. But bottles go for $300-400 when they pop up the vintage. So, you know, I just can't own everything. But yeah, that's high on the wish list one of these days. So there's some good stuff from 1996, but that's my collection. That's my top 12 list, if you will. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing some oddball fragrances here and there that you probably were not expecting. Things like Replay and this Pierre Cardin Centaure box, which I think steals the show. Just I love those fragrances. So thanks for watching. Appreciate everybody's support and the feedback and the comments. Keep those coming. I love getting to interact with you guys. Let me know what your favorites are from 1996. Cheers, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.